Good morning, Nigeria. Welcome to Daybreak, coming to you live from our studios here in the nation's capital city, Abuja. I am Zainab Bella.
A beautiful morning to you. Nice to be here. A beautiful cold morning, by the way, in the nation's capital.
It's
Good
quite
morning,
cold
Zainab.
this morning.
Yes,
Good morning.
it is.
Well, today on the program, we'll be discussing subsidy as the federal government allocates 3 trillion naira to that effect. We would also be discussing Labour's indefinite suspension of its planned strike.
And we'll also bring to you the newspaper review right here in the studio. And not forgetting, I am Dasha and Husseina Usman, by the way.
All right.
Welcome once again.
Well, now on the 30th of January is International Leprosy Day, and later on the program we'll be having a medical doctor walk us through what leprosy is, the preventive measures, and how to go further with the issue of that disease.
Yes, indeed. But for now, let's take a look at what happened today, the 27th, I beg your pardon, of January in world history. Stay tuned.
Quite a number of events that happened on this date, the 27th of January in history.
Yes, indeed. Now today, as we all saw, is International Day of Commemoration in memory of the victims of Holocaust. And, you know, today the resolution was approved in the presence of a group of people who survived the Nazi genocide that killed around 6 million Jews and some 2/3 of Jewish population of Europe during World War II. And it is in 1967, 3 astronauts actually died in a cabin fire while preparing for the Apollo 1 mission, and the accident was a blow to NASA's Apollo manned lunar landing program. You know, this happened back in the day. These are some of the memorable events on the 27th of January, for the day.
Quite very, very interesting. Now let's move on by taking some of the major news highlights. Now, soldiers operating in some strategic places in Ekiti State have arrested 105 men suspected to be political thugs as the People's Democratic Party conducts its primary election in Ekiti State. Now, the suspects were arrested at Itaore in Efon local government area of Ekiti State by men of the 32 Artillery Brigade of the Nigerian Army. Efon shares a border with Ijebu-Ejesha town in Oriade local government area of Osun State. The police public relations officer Ekiti Command ASP Sunday Abutu confirmed that the suspects were being transported with 5 18-passenger buses and were driving along Ijebu-Ejesha Ota-Ore Road when they were arrested on Tuesday evening by soldiers. Abutu said the suspects are arrested with dangerous weapons like locally made pistols and cutlasses premises. But the police spokesman assured that the command detectives will do a thorough investigation about the incident and prosecute those involved.
All right, House of Representatives says major steps have been taken in order to give direction on issues relating to fuel subsidy and state of refineries in Nigeria. House Speaker Femi Gbadabiamila, at the commencement of plenary Wednesday, set up 2 ad hoc committees to conduct investigation on the matter. The 2 committees are mandated to separately determine daily consumption of premium motor spirit in Nigeria and the current state of refineries, including how much it will cost to have them running at maximum capacity. The committees have 4 weeks to conclude the assignment.
All right. Primary school teachers in the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, have begun an indefinite strike on Wednesday over some pending arrears with area councils in the territory. Chairman, National Union of Teachers, Kubwa Chapter, Comrade Ame Baba, confirmed the strike action embarked by the teachers to Daily Trust, and he said the development is following a circular from their union on Tuesday. Baba stated that the area councils are owing their members a log of arrears that cut across payment in promotion and minimum wage beginning from 2011. The NUT leader said part of their agreement to call off the previous strike last November is due to the intervention of FCT Senator Philip Aduda, who said that they would start implementing demands immediately. You know, there has been so much conversations around teachers, you know, remunerations, minimum wage and all of that. And I really wonder, they've been complaining over and over again. And they say, why is it that public primary school teachers in the FCT have to go through this all the time?
You know, it's not just in the FCT. I remember when a story broke of teachers who were paid in percentages, that's in Niger State, and they actually went on strike as well.
In Niger State,
yes,
it's even worse.
Exactly. So, you know, teachers are responsible for developing, you know, the kids who will in turn become leaders of tomorrow. And I think they should be compensated fairly.
I really hope, you know, this comes to pass, and then we see what's really being done about the whole issue of teachers' remuneration and all of that. Now let's move on. We're going to be taking the major stories on our dailies this morning quickly after this time out. Do stay.
Coronavirus disease, COVID-19, is an infectious disease caused by SARS-CoV-2 virus. Most people who fall sick with COVID-19 will experience mild to moderate symptoms and recover without special treatment. However, some will become seriously ill and require medical attention. The virus can spread from an infected person's mouth or nose in small liquid particles when they cough, sneeze, speak, sing, or breathe. These particles range from larger respiratory droplets to smaller aerosols. You can be infected by breathing in the virus if you're near someone who has COVID-19, or by touching a contaminated surface and then touching your eyes, nose, or mouth. The virus spreads more easily indoors and in crowded settings. Maintain a safe distance from others, at least 2 meters, even if they don't appear to be sick. Wear a mask in public, especially indoors or when physical distancing is not possible. Clean your hands often. Use soap and water or an alcohol-based hand sanitizer. Cover your nose and mouth with your bent elbow or a tissue when you cough or sneeze. Stay home if you feel unwell. Get vaccinated. Properly fitted masks can help prevent the spread of the virus from the person wearing the mask to others. Masks alone do not protect against COVID-19 and should be combined with physical distancing and hand hygiene. Protect yourself and others around you by knowing the facts and taking appropriate precautions. Follow advice provided by your local health authority. This message is brought to you by Trust TV.
From all around the world,
our news is factual and concise,
giving you fresh news as it breaks.
Nigerians in the diaspora have decried the unavailability of Nigerian passport booklet.
One tricycle rider feared death while 6 others are critically injured after a moving train hit.
When I sit on the news desk every day,
There's a deep sense of responsibility that overwhelms me.
a responsibility to deliver a message to our viewers.
In the most professional way possible. Trust TV, documenting the Nigerian story.
But in a situation where you find that a person look like the same,
not necessarily tribal or regional.
but I have said that.
All right, welcome back. If you're just joining us, you're watching Daybreak on Trust TV. Now let's take a look at what the papers are saying, and we will start, of course, with the Daily Trust newspaper. We have the lead story here that says FG approves 3 trillion naira for subsidy, warns of tough times ahead. And we have writers here that say we'll continue borrowing to augment price, says presidency. Finance minister gives conflicting figures. Reps probe daily fuel consumption, refineries. NNPC spent 12.5 trillion naira in 16 years. And right at the top there, you'd find a story that says Constitution Review. Reps Committee rejects state police. Investors to get 605 billion naira bond repayment as government expects FAAC payments today. We also have grazing law, treat us as Benue indigents, MacBan charges or term. And details of that story can be found on page 6. We also have stories here that says NEDC to spend 6.7 billion naira in Northeast. Jonathan's cousins kidnapped in Bayelsa. We also have protests at container terminal over agent's death. And right at the footnote, you find a story there that says 2023, Saraki Okorocha joined presidential race, and details of that story can be found on page 14.
Okay, let's take a look at some more stories on the Punch newspaper this morning. The lead story there states governors NLC doubt fuel consumption. NNPC demands 3 trillion naira for subsidy. And the writers there is a lot of fraud in consumption and distribution figures. This is according to FIME. Reps raise 28 member panels to probe daily fuel consumption refineries. You'd also see Nigeria risks bankruptcy as fuel subsidy continues. Experts warn federal government. You see other stories on page 19. Power tariff shortfall hits 2.4 trillion in 6 years, and this is according to a federal government report. On page 24 on the Punch newspaper, you'd see the story about petrol landing cost rises to 282 naira per litre as oil hits $90. You'd also see on page 8 deductions from FAAC to police fund illegal. Court tells federal government. And on page 9, Tinubu graduated from our school, insists Chicago University. Oh, wow, quite interesting. You'd see other stories on the Punch as well that states Akeredolu alleges massive payroll fraud, vows sanctions against culprits. And on page 4 and page 5, you'd see inspector killed fighting herdsmen attackers, 2 bandits dead in Ogun Forest. You'd also find overwhelming majority of Igbo don't believe in secession, and this is according to the Ohaneze. These are some of the major stories on the Punch.
All right, we'll move on to the Guardian newspaper, and right at the top there, you'd see a story that says Rivers floors a federal government over police trust fund deductions. Wike says it's victory for democracy, and you can find details of that story on page 2. We also have the lead story here that says governors Labour kick as NNPC presents 3 trillion naira subsidy bill to FEC. And writers here that say NGF, Labour leaders seek forensic probe of NNPC's figures, alleged fraud in consumption, distribution numbers. Nigeria will pay price for more borrowings. Presidency confirms OPS concerns. And if you come to the bottom there, you'd find more stories that says reps reject immunity for Senate President, Speaker, others, and details of that on page 3. And also from Ekiti, Fayoshe's anointed candidate Kolawole wins PDP primary, and these are some of the stories we have on the front page of Guardian newspaper.
Okay, let's take a look at some more stories on the Nation newspaper this morning. The Nation is also leading with a story about subsidy. Government to fund petrol subsidy with 3 trillion in 1 year. FEC OK's 2.557 trillion supplementary budget. Presidency, we will borrow to meet obligation. And you'd also see all the stories right there at the top. Rivers faults ex-commissioner's defense on dumped plane. You'd also see Sanwo-Olu, we will deliver Okpebi-Ojota Bridge next year. You see on page 5 and page 4 on the Nation newspaper, 2023, Saraki Okorocha to seek presidential ticket. You'd also find Fayoshe's man Kolawole is Ekiti PDP candidate. For some court stories, court stops deduction of police funds from Federation account. It's solely federal government's responsibility. Wike, it's victory for democracy. These are some of the major stories on the Nation newspaper.
All right, moving on quickly to this day newspaper. The lead story there says cash-strapped federal government approves 3 trillion naira, 17.5% of 2022 budget sustained subsidy, and lead under writers that say to send supplementary appropriation to National Assembly, mandates Finance Ministry to reconcile payment with NNPC, NLC knocks government over 18-month timeline. Ibman wants dilapidated refineries fixed. Miami, only 8 states benefiting from subsidy. And we also have a story right at the top that says, again, Rivers floors FG as court declares deductions from Federation accounts to fund its agencies unconstitutional. Orders refund to state, and it's victory for democracy, says Wike.
Okay, now let's take one more paper before we take a look and discuss some of the stories on our dailies this morning. Talking about Business Day newspaper, right on the leading page there, you see hospitals struggle to retain staff amid migration tsunami. You also see other stories, how Nigeria can ease subsidy removal pain. And other stories there, you'd see despite high oil price, Nigeria's cost of borrowing spikes to highest level in 15 months. And you'd also see other stories there. Next generation batteries get wet in dollar rains. These are some of the major stories.
All right, we'll take a few more papers. Blueprint, unlike other newspapers, the lead story for Blueprint here says is on El Rufai on Koran Zangon Katef crisis, and it says we lost 387 lives in 2 years to needless bloodshed. Writers here says Nigeria fast returning to barbarism, says ACF. Forum to meet Afenifere Ohaneze and others. Kaduna seeks recourse to law, peace campaigns, and details of that can be found on page 6. And we also have 2023 APC denies zoning presidential ticket to South. Okorocha joins race, Saraki 6 PDP ticket. And then we also have decision to shelve subsidy removal, not political, says presidency. Details of that can be found on page 22. These are some of the stories on front page of Blueprint.
Okay, we have Hamza Idris, the general editor, Daily Trust, in the studio this morning to discuss some of the major, headlines on our dailies this morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, now the story that seemed to be making wave on our dailies this morning is the issue of petrol subsidy. And on the Daily Trust newspaper, it states federal government approves 3 trillion for subsidy and warns of tough times. And the presidency is saying we'll continue to borrow to augment price. What are your thoughts about that?
Serious problem. Yes, and I pity us because it's an unfortunate situation. This is over 60 years since the discovery of oil in Nigeria. but we are yet to get the sector ready to work. And it's rather unfortunate. While other countries in the world are migrating to greener energy and all that, we are unable to manage whatever energy we may wish to call petrol and other resources. The issue of subsidy will remain with us, and it's rather unfortunate because I believe the world is laughing at Nigeria. Yes, because this is something that we're supposed to have addressed, as I said, over 60 years ago. Because if you have functional refineries, you have good policies and laws regulating the sector, we should be celebrating. Today, oil per barrel is over $80. Countries who put their acts together are celebrating. But in Nigeria, the irony is the higher the price of oil goes, the more problematic it becomes for us, simply because we don't manage the resources. We don't have the refineries to take care of these resources. So the issue of subsidy is around this. Assuming we have functional refineries, nobody will be talking about subsidy. But because the refineries are not there, we are still looking for private sector to give us the refineries and rely on it. And the private sector is not Father Christmas. So the problem will remain. And Nigeria will have no option but to borrow. Long ago they said there is nothing like subsidy. They changed the name to under recovery. But they are now coming to terms with the reality. And it's a serious problem, because if you are allocating about 3 trillion naira to subsidize petroleum, what else will you allocate to other basic necessities like health, like security, like education, and what have you? So I think we should blame ourselves for not using the resources that God blessed us with for our advantage.
Okay, some would really ask, how much crude do we really export?
Well, the NNPC should be in the right position to tell you that, but we should also ask how many liters of refined oil do we import? And I think this is a very simple question, because if you go to the dashboard in the NNPC or the now new Petroleum Downstream and Upstream Commission, you will see the figures there. Where the problem is how many liters do we actually consume in Nigeria? Nobody will tell you this. Of course, those regulating the sector will tell you that, okay, maybe 700 trucks or 3,000 trucks or whatever, leave the tanks in Lagos, in Warri, and all that. But nobody will give you the real figures of what we consume. What we have in the public gallery is that we consume over 60 million liters in Nigeria. And is it true? I have my doubts, because I have traveled around Nigeria very well, and I know that Nigeria subsidizes petrol for all our neighbors. What do I mean? Chad, Cameroon, Niger, Benin, up to Central African Republic. They rely heavily on Nigeria for the fuel they consume. So while we deny ourselves the money, the legal money, accruing to the country, which should be used to provide basics for the citizens, because of our laxity, because of our inability to police our borders, now we feed our neighbors with this. In some places, rat cannot cross the border without it being traced. Yes, but go to Jibia in Katsina State. Go to Daura, up to Kongolam in Katsina State. Go to Dikwa or Gambaru Ngala in Borno State. Go to Banki in Borno State. Go to Cross River. At night you will cry because you will see dozens of trailer loads of petroleum resources, you know, using the right border, our recognized borders. You know, smuggling in court because it's no longer smuggling. If they are using illegal routes and all that, that is when you call it
So
smuggling.
what are the security agents there?
They have failed. They have failed. So I am worried when the House of Reps said they have instituted
28 member panel.
They are not going to do anything because we only react on the spur of the moment, which is very unfortunate. The House of Reps is just taking this decision simply because there is an uproar yesterday that the Federal Executive Council has approved 3 trillion naira. Then it now went into it. For 7 years, this government, I don't want to even go to the next government because we keep blaming the previous administration. Somebody will accuse the colonialist of this monumental failure, which is very unfortunate. Now the House of Reps is saying they are going to investigate. What are they going to investigate? These things I'm saying now, it's not from the moon. These are the facts. So why constituting a committee? What will the committee? They are not going to come out with anything, I can assure you. And in the next couple of days, the whole committee's name or whatever will fizzle out because other issues will come up. So we are not a serious country. The legislature, the judiciary, the executive, we are all not serious.
All right, now the presidency seems to be blaming, you know, borrowings on a subsidy. So are they saying that once it is removed, that borrowings will stop or drastically reduce?
You see, failure has no father. Failure is an orphan. Yes, whoever fails, you see him blaming his neighbor for his misfortune. And success is what people associate themselves with. Now the presidency is saying Nigeria will pay a price. Of course, we'll pay a price, but we should get it right. I'm a reporter. Government is not doing any favor for the people, saying that we will pay the price. For what? Now, assuming we don't have the fuel, meaning we will buy a liter for 2,000? So is it a favor? It is the failure of government to fix the refineries. Assuming they are serious, just this government, when they came in 7 years ago, they should have built like 3 refineries. Forget about the Port Harcourt, which they say they are doing turnaround maintenance, the Kaduna refinery, the Port Harcourt refinery, and all that. These are old refineries. A serious country, after 20, 30 years, I don't have the technological know-how, but you should know that you will not compare, somebody who is 20 years old with somebody who is 50 or 60, right? No matter how you try to fix somebody, the burns of somebody who is 60 years, he will never be like, a toddler or somebody of 15 years. Now, what the government should have done is to keep optimizing the refineries that we have, build new ones, give adequate support for individuals to build modular refineries and all that. Because if you have this on ground, nobody will be talking about subsidy, because we talk about subsidy simply because we export the crude oil and then we import refined oil. Very, very unfortunate. Yes, so assuming we are refining it here, we stand to benefit a lot. In 2006, I was in Adamawa State, Apti American University, during its second matriculation ceremony. You understand? Now I interviewed a professor of petroleum engineering. He nearly cried because he said Nigeria don't know what it is missing. Yes, by exporting the crude oil, because from there you stand to extract no fewer than 15 various things that you can benefit from. So his conclusion was that we are just dashing the crude oil, because those countries that are buying it, they extract rubber, they extract tar, they extract what we use to do jelly, so many things. But that notwithstanding, after giving them, we now pay them again to give us just one element from 15 to import it. And this is where we are even having problem depleting the foreign earning, which should have been deployed to other sectors that will improve the lives of Nigeria. So the truth is, Nigeria is not doing favor for its citizens. Yes, we are paying the price of the delinquency and lack of focus of our leaders. And this goes beyond this administration. But as a leader, or as leaders, if you castigate your predecessor, believing that he did not do things right, when you take over, draw a line, carry on, learn from the lessons, you know, that he failed to use, and then do better. Not to come and repeat or even do worse. Okay. Because we are now paying more than 3 times what was being paid during the previous administration. And this same administration disputed the claim by the former administration that what is subsidy, there is nothing like subsidy. But here we are now, around 17.something% of the national budget going for what they call under recovery. Now they are not even dodging the real name, subsidy, because at the time they were calling it under recovery. But now they have come to terms with their reality that we have failed.
Okay. Now, could you talk to us, you know, about the conflicting figures given by the finance minister? Because one would want to wonder and say, doesn't this undermine the transparency of our government?
Yes. You know, they rely heavily on estimates. When she met the Senate President, that's the Finance Minister, Zainab Ahmed, when she met the Senate President last week, she quoted 250 billion or thereabout as what is being expended every month to subsidize this petroleum subsidy. And then yesterday, after the Federal Executive Council meeting, when she came out briefing reporters, she now said 270 billion every month. Now, this is where the problem is. It might not be mischief, you understand, from our end or from our end. We all have our facts. Probably she is using the prevailing value of the dollar to give the figures, while we in the newsroom, we rely on what you said. We hold leaders to account. Yes, if you say A yesterday and today you say B, C, D, we make reference to what you said yesterday, and there is nothing wrong in that.
Okay, now let's take a look at some other stories that made the front page of newspapers. Let's see, there's this one here about the police trust fund and the court stopping government from, you know, deductions. What do you think about it?
Yes, this one, it is the governor of Rivers State that went to court questioning the legality of the deduction, I think 0.5% or something like that, from monies accruing to the federal government in order to augment what goes to the police. He said it is illegal. And courts, you know, they give you what you ask. And as I said earlier, the courts are not Father Christmas, meaning when you ask for A, they will just look at the validity or otherwise of what you ask. They make reference to relevant constitutional provisions and all that, and then grant your prayers. Now, he said it is wrong for the federal government to fund police trust fund. What we should ask is, what is police trust fund? You see, all the soldiers on the street now, they're not supposed to be there, because that should be the responsibility of the police to maintain civil authority. The military is supposed to be in their barracks and now to protect the sanctity and territorial integrity and sovereignty of the country. But as we speak, you have military operatives in all the 36 states of the Federation, no exception. On the streets, I mean not in the barracks in those states, on the streets, simply because of the failure or inability of the police to do its work. Now, because of this, our leaders, based on advice by former Inspector Generals of Police, former security experts and all that, advise that we should have what they call police trust fund. It's like a stopgap measure. It's like an intervention agency to come and see how they can raise funds to quickly address the teething problems afflicting the police in terms of equipment, in terms of offices, in terms of accommodation, in terms of weapons, and in terms of even uniforms and all that. That was why they formed the police trust fund, so that they will be getting some percentages from different places, even companies. I have the records there. They're supposed to be getting contributions from different, apart from the federal government, even companies, from their profit and all that. They're supposed to be donating something, so that the fund can quickly use what they get to support the police. You understand? Now, the governor of Rivers State said, no, it is wrong, because the act establishing the police clearly states how it should be funded. And he feels that it is very wrong for the federal government to start deducting from what is meant to be shared among the 3 tiers of government. He has his points, but maybe beyond that, it's part of the restructuring thing, and then it's part of the clamor for state police. You can see on the front page of our paper, we have another story, which was saying reps not comfortable with the state police. But what Wiki did indirectly is making case for state police, and that is why he tackled the federal government. You know, he hit the federal government below the belt, because they now have to go to maybe for appeal. But let me tell you something. When did we have the police trust fund, and is it really doing some of its work? Personally, I interviewed some prominent people, you know, who now raised the alarm that the activities of the police trust fund is also shrouded in politics. And they have a lot of money there for them to spend, but because of the interest of some people there and the Ministry of Police Affairs, they are unable to even do their work. And they're supposed to, you know, activate or recharge the police sector in 6 years or thereabout. But up till now, of course, last month or 2 months ago, we saw them, you know, showcasing some vehicles and all that. But honestly, it's a disappointment what they are doing. So we are very good in coming up with reformed measures, but implementation is a problem.
You know, I'm really very keen, quickly before we wrap up this segment, you know, given our security situation presently in the country, isn't it very imperative that we have state police?
It's a dicey question, Zainab. Yes, Left to me, we should have it because, in fact, we already have state police, informal state police. Yes, because you see the Hisba in Kano, they are policing the society. And you can imagine without the Hisba how chaotic Kano will be. For every intersection, for every T-junction, in the markets, you know, around schools, you see the Hisba operatives. If you go to Maiduguri, if not for the civilian JTF, I don't know how we will have contained the activities of the Boko Haram insurgents. Now the Amotekun in Lagos, you understand? Then the one they call, is it Obebiogu in the south or something? You see, all these are informal
state police.
State police, yes. Because many of them, all Hisba operatives in Kano receive, I think, commission or salary in one way or the other. All of those working in Borno, in Yobe, in Adamawa, you know, the livestock guards in Benue, all of them, they receive salary. You see, so these are state police, but we have this penchant of, you know, talking over and again on certain things that, okay, we must have things in the constitution, we must have backing of the parliament and all that. In Britain, do they have written constitution? Sometimes they are just they work on conventions and all that. Now these state governors, I think they should just continue to use the what they have now, because some of them take pump action, you know, and other weapons in order to protect themselves and then to protect some of the communities they are asked to police. But simply because we politicize everything, the governors want to have powers to say, okay, River State Police Command, apart from the, you know, the National Police Command you have there. And by the time you have this, the fear is that many of these governors will abuse the police. And that time, they will give them AK-47, they will give them AA, they will give them rocket launchers. So the fear is that they will use the instrument of state to descend on the opposition, to descend on people with dissenting voices against them. That is the fear. But if not, what is wrong in having state police? There is no problem in having state police.
All right, and with that, we will wrap up newspaper review. Thank you so much, Hamza Idris, for joining us on the show, General Editor, Daily Trust. We hope to have you once again.
Inviting me.
All right, with this, we'll move on to the next discussion after the break. Stay tuned.
Coronavirus disease, COVID-19, is an infectious disease caused by SARS-CoV-2 virus. Most people who fall sick with COVID-19 will experience mild to moderate symptoms and recover without special treatment. However, some will become seriously ill and require medical attention. The virus can spread from an infected person's mouth or nose in small liquid particles when they cough, sneeze, speak, sing, or breathe. These particles range from larger respiratory droplets to smaller aerosols. You can be infected by breathing in the virus if you're near someone who has COVID-19, or by touching a contaminated surface and then touching your eyes, nose, or mouth. The virus spreads more easily indoors and in crowded settings. Maintain a safe distance from others, at least 2 meters, even if they don't appear to be sick. Wear a mask in public, especially indoors or when physical distancing is not possible. Clean your hands often. Use soap and water or an alcohol-based hand sanitizer. Cover your nose and mouth with your bent elbow or a tissue when you cough or sneeze. Stay home if you feel unwell. Get vaccinated. Properly fitted masks can help prevent the spread of the virus from the person wearing the mask to others. Masks alone do not protect against COVID-19 and should be combined with physical distancing and hand hygiene. Protect yourself and others around you by knowing the facts and taking appropriate precautions. Follow advice provided by your local health authority. This message is brought to you by Trust TV.
From all around the world,
Our news is factual and concise.
giving you fresh news as it breaks.
Nigerians in the diaspora have decried the unavailability of Nigerian passport booklet.
One tricycle rider feared death while 6 others are critically injured after a moving train hit.
When I sit on the news desk every day,
There's a deep sense of responsibility that overwhelms me.
a responsibility to deliver a message to our viewers.
In the most professional way possible. Trust TV, documenting the Nigerian story.
Discussion on the table right now is about subsidy. Yesterday we had a lot of engagements. We met here at the State House. We met with the President of the Senate, of the President of the Senate of the Federal Republic. And today we have also consulted with Mr. President. So what we're about to give you is a collective agreed position of the government so that you do not hear from me. Hello, the mic is not on. Hello? So this, what you are going to hear from me is the position of the government on the issue of fuel subsidy removal.
All right, welcome back. If you are just joining us, this is Daybreak on Trust Television, reaching you live from our studios here in the nation's capital. Now, to kickstart our first discussion, President Muhammadu Buhari has decided to leave the issue of subsidy for the next administration, following the decision of the federal government to extend the subsidy on fuel for another 18 months, pending when an amendment in the Petroleum Industry Act will be forwarded to the National Assembly. Now, the current administration has about 16 months left to vacate office. Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Tibipre Silva, said President Muhammadu Buhari, being aware of the negative implications of total subsidy removal, has graciously approved that the time frame is extended to allow the government to put necessary palliatives in place. Now, let's get the position of Labour on the issue of subsidy. We have joining us in the studio the president of the Nigerian Labour Congress, Comrade Ayuba Waba. Good morning and welcome.
Well, thank you. Good morning, Nigerians, and thank you for having me on this platform.
Okay. Now, the Nigerian Labour Congress was slated to go for an indefinite, strike, and then suddenly we hear it's been called off. What prompted the change of heart?
Well, thank you very much. First, let me start with this whole issue about whether there is subsidy or there is no subsidy. It has been a recurring decimal in our polity from the inception of democracy to date. Under Obasanjo, the same argument was used. You remembered after Obasanjo, Eradua, before he assumed office, there was also this issue of subsidy. And the price of a liter of PMS was increased to about 70 before Obasanjo left. He came and reversed it to 65 and engaged labor. And there was a very fruitful engagement where there were some timeline and also there were some agreements. Unfortunately, he didn't live long, actually, to try to implement some of those policies, because he drove the policy. He personally drove the policy to say that the refineries will be fixed, and he reversed the sale of the refineries, looking at the very profound argument that NLC have put on the table. This have continued, and here we are. And you remember also this government, I remember the first engagement we had under Ike Kachiku as the minister. There was timeline set to actually revitalize the refineries and make sure they are working optimally. In fact, the timeline was between the year 2020 and 2021. But here we are again at the same position that these issues started many years back, now discussing again the issue of subsidy. And because you recall that late last year, precisely November, the Minister of Finance made a pronouncement to the effect that there will be removal of subsidy, and that the PMS price will actually be hiked. In fact, figures were being branded. And we thought that on this issue, there had been a discussion. We were on a discussion table with government. We started in 2020. And the meeting was adjourned sine die because parties exchanged briefs. There were technical committees that were set up. Issues were distilled. Labour actually made some recommendation. Government came with their own and said, okay, we're going to look at it and then revert back to you. They never reverted back to us. What we had was a policy pronouncement that this issue will take effect. And we know the implication, particularly on workers that are on fixed wages and those in the informal sector who are in the majority. What has actually instigated inflation in our system is actually the incessant increase of this very important commodity. And if you look at the parameters and the issues, it means it's a vicious cycle. It will continue. As long as the value of our currency will continue to be devaluated, and they are doing that every quarter, it means the price will continue to go up. We have seen it with diesel. We have seen it with kerosene. They have been fully deregulated, but Nigerians never benefited from it. Even when the price of crude oil was almost at $1 at international market, during the hype of the COVID-19, the price of diesel never came down. Nigerians have been exploited, and we put all of this on the table. So as a response to the pronouncement of the Minister of Finance, our National Executive Council also met on the 17th of December to say, well, we reject that policy. We reminded them of where we are on the negotiating table. And we also said some of the promises made have not been kept in the past. In 2016, when we engaged this issue, the issue of palliative was on the table. In fact, government promised to commit 500 billion to address the issue of palliative. There was this issue of conversion of vehicles to compressed natural gas and liquefied petroleum products. And I think there was this issue of about committing about 260 billion, which is what is going on in other climes. As I speak to you in Cote d'Ivoire, they have converted more than 10,000 vehicles. That is vehicles that actually use diesel. In Egypt, as I speak, is over 38,000 vehicles that is being converted. And in the conversion, you need 3 levels. One, you need the parts, you need the service center, but also you need service stations. Like you have the fuel station, you need service station where people can go and actually get those products in their vehicle. So all of this never take place. They were not put in place. And here we are again at the same level where we started many years back. So the neck of NLC then made a pronouncement to say, well, if government goes ahead with this policy, which these are the effects, and it's like transferring the inefficiency in the system to Nigerians to continue to bear. And all of us know of the inefficiency. Every issue of scam you have heard about. In fact, 2 days ago I was reading on The Guardian. Somebody is still charged to court because there have been diversion of about 1.4 billion, which he collected through false pretext in the name of subsidy, where they wrote letters, and all those letters were false. So it's this same inefficiency that we want to now transfer to consumers. And it means consumers will continue to be exploited. So it was in the context of all of this argument that the NLC now made a pronouncement to say, well, if government goes ahead, in the first instance, we'll actually embark on a national protest, which will then follow up with a strike action. But since government also in its wisdom have seen reason, and from the issues that have been flagged off, particularly the impact that this policy will have on majority of Nigerians, especially that we are just recovering from recession. We are just recovering from the challenge of COVID-19. We have not even fully recovered. And basically to then impose this, we are also struggling with insecurity in many places, where a lot of people have now become internally displaced persons. And therefore there will be a negative impact. And certainly people cannot be able to bear this issue. You also remember that part of why we also negotiated the minimum wage was part of the package in 2016, when the issue of subsidy also came, that subsidy had been removed, and the price of PMS was moved from 87 naira per litre to the current price of 145 then, before now even the adjustment to what we have now. And as I speak, 6 states have not even made any effort to start to implement the minimum wage. So you can see the situation. If somebody is still on 18,000 or lower than 18,000, and we have a bag of rice selling for 30,000, then we are just trying to send them to their early graves. So all of this put together necessitated the neck of NLC and our civil society allies in large number to then make this pronouncement that this is the way to go to engage this issue. And we have done it over the years. And we have gotten some concession. We have gotten government to try to put some policies and programs in place, but we are not yet there. So when that policy was then reversed, I mean the pronouncement by the Minister of Finance was then reversed to say that, well, government have also reversed itself, that they have looked at the implication, and therefore there will be further consultation, and importantly that the issue of total withdrawal of subsidy is no longer an issue on the table. Okay. So we also thought that we shouldn't also go ahead, because the major issue that actually made us to take that decision is about the issue of the subsidy. So once the issue is not on the table, we also thought that no, we shouldn't just also go ahead, because already the subject matter has been addressed.
Okay. Now, you know, with the way the whole issue of subsidy is going, it seems it's going to be carried over to the next administration, and they would have quite a lot of work to do. Well,
from the historical perspective I've shared with you, from the first return to democracy in 1999, it has always been rollover from one administration to another. And any administration that comes, in fact, the last administration, as I said subsidy had been removed. And basically that is how the price was jacked. But the major issue in the whole conversation is actually the misfortune of our currency. The naira have continued to be devaluated. And that's why some of those arguments are not profound. When you tell me that, well, fuel is being sold in Nigeria cheaper than our neighboring countries, you need to make empirical comparison. What have been the value of their currency? And I've said so severally in many platforms that have actually appeared, to say that when you are making comparison, use all the necessary variables to be able to actually make such comparison. All those countries, their currency have remained very stable when you compare it to the naira. In fact, I was sharing just 2 days ago when I have a similar platform to discuss this issue, that 5 years back, 1 million sefa was equivalent to 245,000 naira. As we speak, 1 million sefa is almost equivalent to 1 million naira. So you can see their currency have remained stable, and our currency have continued to be devaluated every quarter. This is the main issue. Just imagine if today a dollar is equivalent to 156, which was the issue about 5-7 years back. What will then be the price of PMS? Even the landing cost, as we are saying. But many things have not been done. And part of the issue is that this issue have keep reoccurring because we didn't fix the issue on a permanent basis. It was always an ad hoc solution. Because refining petroleum products for domestic use is not rocket science. Many countries have refineries, they don't have oil. So we take our oil there, refine it and bring it back. And we are now crying that, well, the price is going up at international market, there is falling value of our currency, and then the citizens have to bear the brunt of this policy incoherence. So it's not something that we can explain. I think all the argument, including those that are posited by so-called economics that are neoliberal in their thinking, I think we should be able to interrogate all of this. Because the perspective, they say, oh, if we don't remove subsidy, it then means that the economy will crumble. It then means that people will die if you do that. You must be very coherent in your policy. What are we doing wrong that we are not able to get it right? I think those so-called economists, those are the things they need to tell us. I had some of the comparison. They made comparison with other OPEC countries to say that, well, fuel is being sold at this price. They also forget the fact that our currency has been on a free fall. So they also said, oh, it's being sold in Saudi Arabia, in this country, this is the price. What is the per capita income of the citizens of that country? What is the minimum wage in those countries? So when you are comparing apple, you compare apple with apple. You don't compare apple with guava and say you want people to just believe what you are saying. So those so-called economists, I don't think, they are neoliberal in their thinking. So they will always advance issues and perspectives that will defend their position. And don't also forget, before we go to where we are, who were the people driving this process and making the pronouncement first? It was IMF or World Bank. They have called on Nigerian government severally to remove subsidy. Is it part of the conditionalities of the loan we have been collecting? And nobody can explain that. But basically, I think there are things we need to do to address this issue once and for all. It's about fixing our refineries, encouraging modular refineries. Look at, for instance, the issue of diesel. Diesel is the most easiest among the petroleum products to be refined. It can be done through modular refineries. And all those illegal refineries we are talking about, what they are refining is actually diesel. But yet, the price of diesel never came down. Even when the price of crude oil, as I said, was around $2, $1 during the hype of COVID-19. It never came down. And we put this question, if we say market forces will determine the price from kerosene and diesel, it has proven otherwise.
Okay.
So why should people put informations and facts that are not correct? So those are the issues, and this is the perspective on labor. It's about protecting the economic and social rights of citizens, and particularly workers, through constructive engagement, through policy options that will work for our country, because we are exporting our jobs. When you refine 1 barrel of crude oil, you are sure I think about 18 derivatives that will be of benefit. Some of those derivatives, we are still importing them. Look at bitumen that is used to tar our roads. This is one of the byproducts. We need not to import it if we are refining. So those are some of the issues that I think are very important and germane in the argument.
Okay,
and that is what formulated the position of NLC, which has remained very traditional in engaging this issue.
Okay, now, yes, you recently urged the government to build new refineries and also, revamp our old ones. And with the suspension of the subsidy removal, do you see this happening before the next elections?
Well, as I said earlier, promises have been made, but those promises were never kept. And I said clearly, if you try to Google, you will find out that in our first engagement with Kachuku, the former Minister of State for Petroleum, government gave timeline on when the refineries will be fixed, the 4 refineries. But yet, nothing has happened. Well, there is now an attempt to refurbish the Port Harcourt refinery. We hope it works. It will not work because there is a lot of incentive in importation that people will deliberately not allow the refineries to work. I think the cheering news is about the private initiative being driven by Alhaji Aliko Dangote. It's very progressive. He should be encouraged, and Nigerians should actually commend him for this initiative. Why should we be taking our crude oil to other countries for refining? And we claim that our youths are unemployed. The best way to create decent jobs is actually through manufacturing, through productive economy. We can be able to engage our youths. And in this sector alone, if you know the chain of benefit, including employment opportunities that will be created and generated, is something that is mind-boggling. And therefore, this is the way to go. is to continue to hold government accountable to their words, to their promises, what they have promised to be done. I remember there was some commitment to say, well, we can be able to refurbish one refinery every year or biannually. And by now, if we will have done that, the 4 refineries will have been refurbished, and they will have been working optimally. In our well-researched document, which we are going to publicize and share, all those perspectives have been shared, what needs to be done, including how to actually protect the pipelines. All of this perspective, we have commissioned a study by one of the best petroleum economists in the world. Is a Nigerian, and proudly from the ASU Extraction Academic Staff Union. He's now based in Texas. We have brought him here severally to have a conversation. These are some of the people that Nigerian government need to actually consult to give us a perspective of what needed to be done. Not the liberal agents that are parading themselves as best economists around the world, and basically what they are proposing is to continue in this light of continual importation. Importing and continue to import without the perspective of refining a petroleum product. And we are the only country in the whole of the membership of OPEC that is importing nearly 100% of the product that we use locally.
Okay, so could you talk to us about the issue of minimum wage in states? How far along are we?
Well, thank you very much. It has remained a very thorny issue. I must commend some of our state governors that have implemented, even without any push. Many of them, as I speak to you, 31 states and FCT have commenced implementation. And I must commend them. In fact, some of them actually respected the provision of the law. The provision of the law is that once the National Minimum Wage Act is promulgated, it's obligatory on all employers of labor, not only state governments, private employers of labor. Once you are employing over and above the threshold provided in the law, you are under obligation to actually pay the minimum wage, because you know also that the purchasing power of many workers have dwindled because of the misfortune in our economy. So that is the principle, and I've tried to lay the foundation about the minimum wage, because there is some argument about, the federal cannot fix a minimum wage for states or private sector. No, the principle is guided by an international convention, that is the ILO Convention on Minimum Wage. And therefore, all members of the ILO are actually under obligation to respect the law. And when people bring in the argument of federalism, we have since debunked that argument. America is a federal state. But the national minimum wage is actually fixed by the center. States can pay higher, but you can't pay lower. It's to protect the workers at the lower echelon from exploitation, because if you leave every employer to fix wages, it then means workers will be exploited. So we gave that argument, including Germany. As we speak today, the president of America, before his election, promised the workers of America that he is going to review the minimum wage. He's proposing to take it to now $15 per hour, and already processes have commenced. But here we are, our people who want to practice federalism, but they don't want to actually be guided by the dictates and also what will bring about social justice and shared prosperity in our system. So basically in Nigeria, this has been the situation. And I think the states that have not been able to implement are also very known. Abia in the southeast, and in the northeast we have Taraba. In the north central we have Kogi. We have Cross River in the south, and 2 other states. So basically, this is the situation. They have no reason. In fact, states with small resources were the first to implement minimum wage. States with abundant resources, they were dragging their feet until labor now begin to push. So this is where we are. It's about social justice. It's about prioritizing what will bring about peace, stability, and shared prosperity. It's not about resources, because I've seen clearly from the data that we have, states that have humongous resources will prefer to be awarding white elephant projects, possibly taking kickbacks, than paying workers their pension and gratuity. One issue auxiliary to the issue of the minimum wage is the issue of payment of gratuity to retirees. A worker will have worked for 35 years, The only thing he will fall back to or retirement outside his monthly pension is his gratuity. We call it the golden handshake. Many states today are in default. In fact, the liability is in trillions. And let me use this medium to commend those that are actually doing well. In fact, first on the list, without any iota of contradiction, is Bruno. Recently, he committed 12 billion in 2 installments to defray gratuity that he has inherited for the past 15 years. As we speak, he has defrayed from the last 15 years to date, he has defrayed it. Jigawa is one example that everybody is celebrating. They also have a model that as you retire, you are being paid. Lagos is making a lot of effort. Oyo State need to be commended, and Kebbi State. Kebbi State also released 12 billion to defray, and another 6 billion to try to also defray. But you have many states that have humongous resources. You see rivers. People are protesting every day. Our retirees, I think for the past 9 years, have not been paid their benefit. They have been on the street. It's not about resources. It's about priority. And therefore, we need to also look at this very important issue that will stabilize the system. Because if retirees are not able to have a meaningful living, they will not be able to take care of their families. Their families will be in disarray. And therefore, the social system will actually also be heated up. That's why you have this issue of crime going up. Okay. All manner of crimes going up. So I think it's also good for our political elites to prioritize the issue of gratuity. And I think it's also to commend the federal government. They have been up to date in the payment of accrued rights. Because under the contributory pension scheme, those that have actually been in service before 2004, when the scheme started, they have accrued rights, which federal government ought to pay side by side with the issue of their contributory funds in their PFEs. So that have been paid up to date. And that's why you can see that those issues are being sorted out and they are being paid. So I think states need to follow suit, including also implementation of the contributory pension scheme, which will address the issue of payment of monthly pension to our retirees, because workers will continue to retire. But if they retire, it's expected that they should have something to fall back to.
Okay, now, just before we go on a break, I really want to ask this question. Isn't there any other way we can reach the government aside protesting?
Well, thank you very much. If you listen to me carefully, I said we are on the dialogue table. Because strike or protest is not the first option. It's like a last resort. You can only go on protest if negotiation broke down or if the other party decided to shut you out. And in this case, I told you clearly that we are on a discussion table. And the meeting was adjourned sine die for parties to look at the issues. But basically, the honors of convening a meeting rests squarely on government. That meeting was never reconvened, only for policy pronouncements to be made. So in this circumstance, I think you can say that Labour have done all it should do to be able to engage government, because we believe in social dialogue. It's part of the very clear provisions of the International Labour Standard. That first is dialogue. You dialogue before you then confront if dialogue fails. Okay. So we are still committed to dialogue. And we have actually proven that we don't only go to the dialogue table, we'll also go prepared. We'll go prepared with information, with perspective, and what we think can be able to address the issue.
All right, now, shortly before we go on that break, just before the protest or the suspension of subsidy, some quarters actually accused you of having an ulterior motive or misplacing your priorities, saying that there are other issues that needs solutions rather than, a removal of fuel subsidy. What's your take on that?
Well, I think everybody has his own opinion, but it's not one person's idea. I told you the National Executive Council. And it's one issue that have multiply effect on the lives of every worker, every citizen. It's an issue that Labour have engaged from time immemorial about making sure that there is social justice. For us, it's key. It's a major priority. Because if the price of PMS is moved from the current 165 or 163 to about 320 or 340 per liter that is being proposed, every Nigerian worker, including myself, will be affected. So basically, what is more priority at this point in time than that? So basically, that is, I think, our priority and the priority of Nigerians. And basically, we will remain focused to engage some of those issues. But basically, as they come, we prioritize them. That's how we have engaged those issues. And basically, we will remain focused in addressing those issues.
Okay. Now let's go on.
And it's diversionary. That is just diversionary. You know, people will try to divert your attention and also try to bring perspectives to try to deflate a very core and germane issue. Okay. So we are not assuaged with that type of postulation. It's usual.
Okay, now let's go on a quick break. When we come back, we're going to take a look at some more perspectives. Do stay.
From all around the world,
Our news is factual and concise.
giving you fresh news as it breaks.
Nigerians in the diaspora have decried the unavailability of Nigerian passport booklet.
One tricycle rider feared death while 6 others are critically injured after a moving train hit.
When I sit on the news desk every day,
There's a deep sense of responsibility that overwhelms me.
a responsibility to deliver a message to our viewers.
In the most professional way possible. Trust TV, documenting the Nigerian story.
All right, welcome back. We are still discussing subsidy with the president of the Nigeria Labour Congress, Ayuba Waba, here in the studio with us. Okay, now could you comment on the federal government's approval of 3 trillion naira for subsidy?
Well, it's still an issue that I think need to be interrogated because the figures and even the amount of consumption of PMS per day remains a very mysterious issue. Whereas I think the figure being used to calculate the subsidy over time, not only now, will remain a very controversial issue. I think it's one issue that also needs to be interrogated. And I think all the stakeholders agree that the so-called figure, which we have been using, you remember it started with few billions. This money used for payment of subsidy started with few billions. And now we are talking of trillions. So basically, I think that figure needs to be interrogated. It's still within the domain of government, whatever they want to do, whether to continue to quote these bogus figures and say it is payment for subsidy. But I think the economic empiricals demand that we also try to do what is right. First, in our document, we have also posited that we need to interrogate the amount of liters of PMS that we claim is being consumed daily in Nigeria. Two figures. One of the figures is hovering around 50-something million liters per day, and the other one is hovering around 100. And the reason advanced is that, a substantial amount is being smuggled out of borders, which is almost at par with what we consume. So if you look at it carefully, I think there's a lot of issues that need to be cleaned up there. There need to be a lot of transparency, and there need to be a lot of policy that need to address that issue. Why should we allow smuggling, for instance? Because the amount we are talking about that is being smuggled will require about 200 trucks to actually smuggle those products across our borders on a daily basis. And I think it's not something that is so minute that somebody can put in his pocket and actually cross the border. So a lot of effort needs to be done. One is to even eliminate the so-called issue of smuggling, which is possible. Every marketer that will actually have products should have a filling station. In this age of technology, we can track every truck to the filling station, how it dispenses, and how many vehicles actually take fuel from a filling station on a daily basis. There are a lot of devices now that can be used to give us empirical data, filling station by filling station, truck by truck, how this can be tracked is possible. And two, if our borders have remained very short, the borders are closed, I think also we need to interrogate this theory of smuggling, which is what have actually jacked up what is claimed that is being consumed daily, which also will then also give us the calculation of the amount that is being spent on the subsidy. So I think those figures, I don't have details of what the figure composed, but from the information and analysis we have seen or heard from different platforms is that, both what is consumed and what is being smuggled is then what is being used to compute the subsidy. And I say so because of the fact that we are even yet to dispense with the fraud in the subsidy of the past regime. As I speak to you, EFCC is still prosecuting a lot of people. And we have seen the humongous amount that have been stolen through the same process. So it's good that we first sanitize the system. I think one of the things that government need to do, and that cannot take longer than necessary. In 3 months, you can sanitize the system. Even if it means we commit resources to get devices. Now you can even, you see these cameras, small cameras that use solar lights that you can even install in your house. As somebody is touching your door, you can even see him from your device, your handset. You can see it. There are many innovations now around the world and devices that we can track this. And we can be certain, empirically, of the amount of PMS, or the amount of diesel, or the amount of DBK, or the amount of aviation fuel that is consumed daily, empirically. And therefore, there will be no guesswork. Also, there will be no padding of the figure, because padding also has become part and parcel of the polity, whether at the National Assembly or in many figures, padding is there. So I think we can interrogate all of this, and then everybody will be certain that the figure that is being quoted is actually can be justified in the real economic challenge that we are in. So basically, I think that would be my perspective over the figure that have been paraded because of where we are coming from and the information that are also available to every Nigerian about how the figure is being computed.
All right, now, would you say federal government's policies are friendly? And also, would like to know your initial take, your take on the initial plan of government removing subsidy in order to pay 5,000 naira transportation grants to poor Nigerians?
Well, we have since actually argue about the coherence of government policy on that. I think many of our civil society allies have analyzed this proposal to say that, well, what you will be spending in the so-called transportation palliative to the citizens is even higher than what you will pay subsidy. So I think it's one issue that we need to look at. And in that also the same argument. The impact of the removal of subsidy, or the impact of, I don't want to use even the word subsidy, the impact of the hike in the price of PMS from the current price to either the 320 or the 340 that is being proposed will affect 90% of Nigerians. It will impact either directly or indirectly on 90% of Nigerians. And let me give you an analysis. It's either you are using motorcycle, you use a small generator for those in the villages, I pass my neighbor, or small businesses in the medium, small scale businesses, tailoring, barbing, they use small generators, I pass my neighbor, or you use keke napep, of which from the analysis we have made, there is no state in Nigeria today that does not have about 1 million keke napep. And those that have vehicles, and importantly also those that run transportation vehicles also on petrol. So if you look at the impact generally, once you increase the price of keke napep will go up. So everybody will be impacted. The price of those using small generators will go up. Motorcycle will go up. Your vehicle will also go up. In fact, I did a small calculation. If you increase the price by about 150%, if now you fill your tank with maybe 11,000 naira, add 150% to it, you know how much it will cost. How much is your earning? How much is the money allocated to workers to pay for utility bills and transportation? You find out that there is actually a gap. And basically, all of these have not been put into consideration. So saying that we are going to extend 5,000 to palliative transportation, I think it doesn't actually add up. It doesn't address the issue. And basically, we don't even have empirical data. Because even the palliative that have been given, we have seen the situation. The poor of the poor that need the palliative have never received it. So basically, this is the issue. Because the poor of the poor don't even have a bank account. The poor of the poor, even the urban poor, many of them don't have a bank account. So we could not reach them because we don't have empirical data. The destitutes that we have, we don't have empirical data to be able to use. So I think there is a lot of problem with that, and it has been proven that some such a policy certainly will not address the issue that we are talking about. And coming from 2016, I said there was the same initiative to use 500 billion naira to actually extend palliative to the workers, including the urban poor. That never happened. And basically, we never had any data that had been implemented. So it's the same issue that I think will actually follow up with this. And that's why I think many Nigerians, and including organized labor, we thought that it's not a statement or a policy that we will try to support. Yes, there are ways that palliative can be extended, especially during the COVID. I think we have also seen it. Palliative have been given out, but yet some of them have been hoarded in warehouses. And people have to then, at the end of the day, during the process, help themselves. So basically, those are some of the issues. So I don't think we will agree hook, line, and sinker with some of those recommendations. There are things we can interrogate, and there are things we can do that will actually have larger impact. Let me also tell you that why the impact will be so perverse is because of the fact that we don't have other means of transportation. In other climes, when the price of gasoline goes up and down, they don't feel the impact because they have train system effective, covering everywhere in their country. They have trams. You can also go by ship. So all of these transport systems are subsidized. In fact, if you go to countries around the world, some of those transport systems are subsidized. So everybody you can even leave your car for 1 year. You don't need to drive your car because the system is actually working effectively.
Okay.
In our case, we don't have those options.
All right.
People tend to go by road. Even the agri produce that we bring from our farms, you need to use truck, you need to use transportation. And because the cost of diesel is high, the cost of food items will not come down. So those are the issues. And therefore, that is why we thought that it's not a well thought out plan or well thought out policy that we can't just embrace hook, line, and sinker.
All right, then. Well, thank you so much for coming on the program. We've been speaking with the president of the Nigeria Labour Congress, Ayuba Waba, here with us in the studio, and we hope to have you next time.
Well, thank you very much for this opportunity, and I think we have shared our perspectives, and I think it will actually enrich the dialogue and the discourse on this very thorny issue.
Right, and we'll be on the lookout for that. Now, stay tuned. After this quick timeout, we'll be taking a look at our second discussion, talking about leprosy.
Coronavirus disease, COVID-19, is an infectious disease caused by SARS-CoV-2 virus. Most people who fall sick with COVID-19 will experience mild to moderate symptoms and recover without special treatment. However, some will become seriously ill and require medical attention. The virus can spread from an infected person's mouth or nose in small liquid particles when they cough, sneeze, speak, sing, or breathe. These particles range from larger respiratory droplets to smaller aerosols. You can be infected by breathing in the virus if you're near someone who has COVID-19 or by touching a contaminated surface and then touching your eyes, nose, or mouth. The virus spreads more easily indoors and in crowded settings. Maintain a safe distance from others, at least 2 meters, even if they don't appear to be sick. Wear a mask in public, especially indoors or when physical distancing is not possible. Clean your hands often. Use soap and water or an alcohol-based hand sanitizer. Cover your nose and mouth with your bent elbow or a tissue when you cough or sneeze. Stay home if you feel unwell. Get vaccinated. Properly fitted masks can help prevent the spread of the virus from the person wearing the mask to others. Masks alone do not protect against COVID-19 and should be combined with physical distancing and hand hygiene. Protect yourself and others around you by knowing the facts and taking appropriate precautions. Follow advice provided by your local health authority. This message is brought to you by Trust TV.
From all around the world,
Our news is factual and concise.
giving you fresh news as it breaks.
Nigerians in the diaspora have decried the unavailability of Nigerian passport booklet.
One tricycle rider feared death while 6 others are critically injured after a moving train hit.
When I sit on the news desk every day,
There's a deep sense of responsibility that overwhelms me.
a responsibility to deliver a message to our viewers.
In the most professional way possible. Trust TV, documenting the Nigerian story.
All right, welcome back to the final discussion on Daybreak on Trust TV. Now, like my co-anchor said earlier, we will be talking about leprosy in commemoration of World Leprosy Day, scheduled to hold on the 30th of January. Okay, now World Leprosy Day is observed internationally every year on the last Sunday of January to increase the public awareness of leprosy or Hansen's disease. Now, this date was chosen by French humanitarian Raoul Follereau as a tribute to the life of Mahatma Gandhi, who had compassion for people afflicted with leprosy. Now, this year's day will be observed on Sunday, January 30th, 2022. And right here in the studio, we have a doctor with us, a medical practitioner, to talk about or give us perspectives on the disease, talking about Dr. Bright Oris. Good morning and welcome to Daybreak.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Good morning, Dr. Bright.
Good morning.
I love your hair.
Thank you.
All right, so can you just give us a brief background on leprosy?
Okay, so leprosy is also called Hansen's disease. It's a bacterial infection, infectious disease caused by Mycobacterium leprae. That's a specific name of the bacteria that causes leprosy. So basically, it's the kind of bacteria that invades the skin and the peripheral nervous systems, which means distal feeling and all that. Over the years, people have had different impressions about what leprosy is, and most of them are actually very wrong. It will surprise you because people think, oh, this disease is like an affliction, you know, some kind of diabolic disease, something that is abstract, you know. But it's just a simple bacterial infection. That's just it.
That's really very interesting, because when you talk about leprosy, when you say leprosy, we think it comes with a disability and all of that. I never knew that it was a bacterial infection in any way.
Now, eventually, if left untreated, of course, it leads to disability. That is the highlight. When people think about leprosy, that is just what they see. They see the cases where the person did not receive treatment and it led to a disability.
Okay.
But generally, it takes a lot for that bacterial infection to actually lead to that disability. It takes a lot. It takes years even. It's not something you get and then you just immediately start having those disability as perceived by people that don't know this.
Okay, so at what point would you say, when you see a leprosy case, and then you say, okay, it looks like you're heading towards the disability path?
Heading towards disability. Well, if the person is untreated, the person is not receiving treatment, that's the path. The person is going to get disabled eventually. If the person doesn't treat it, it's just like any other infection. For example, you leave your malaria untreated, you are going to even bring down more, and often maybe even die from untreated malaria. So same with leprosy. If left untreated, disability happens.
All right, now this year's theme for World Leprosy Day is United for Dignity, right? Okay, why is World Leprosy Day celebrated, and you know, what's with the theme, United for Dignity?
Yeah, because there is so much stigma that is attached to leprosy, and I would say unprovoked stigma, unnecessary stigma that is attached to leprosy. So which is why there's this awareness to actually correct this mentality that people have about leprosy, and you being united, knowing that, okay, this doesn't mean that you have to ostracize everybody with this particular bacterial infection. You know, it has to be something that we correct as a mentality in people first, hence the theme for this particular year's Leprosy Day.
Okay, so for normal people, what are some of the cues that will tell you, okay, this person has leprosy, just for like normal people before you actually go to the hospital? Are there certain, you know, traits that you see?
Yeah, there are different kinds of leprosy. There's the paucibacillary, there's a multibacillary. So basically, for a layman, a lay person, there's what we call the hypopigmented lesions. Now, you see, it looks like, should I say eczema? But now it's well-defined. You see a well-defined lesion, part of the body that is hypopigmented, which means lighter than other parts of your body. So you see let's say, a round circular part of your body,
Okay.
your skin, obviously, that is well described, circular, in a way.
Does it look like
And
a ringworm in any way?
Something like that.
Oh,
exactly. You know the way ringworm,
Yes.
circles. So something like that. But then it's hypopigmented. So if, let's say, this is your skin tone, it's lighter than that. So you see a circular area that is lighter than your skin tone, and there's reduced sensitivity in that area.
Wow.
So when you see a part like that, and then there's reduced sensitivity, it's called hypoaesthetic. So you see reduced sensitivity in that area, it will give you a hint that, yes, this might be leprosy. This is possibly leprosy. So the next thing to do is to see a doctor and get tested.
Okay, now how do you, because you talked about the area being hyperpigmented, how are you able to differentiate between vitiligo and leprosy?
We do a skin biopsy, we do a skin test. Okay. We test it, we take a sample of the skin, we check it. There's what we call the acid-fast bacilli tests to check for that particular bacteria. There's also the PCR test to check for the bacteria. So you put that under a microscope, it'll give you a good, clear picture what exactly it is.
Okay, but is there a cure?
Of course. There's treatment for leprosy, there's cure for leprosy. It's a bacterial infection. Just like the way you get your normal bacterial infection, you take antibiotics and then you're cured. Same applies to leprosy. It's not an incurable infectious disease. And this is the mentality a lot of people have gathered over the years. That leprosy is incurable, you can't cure it and all that. No, that's inaccurate.
Okay, so how far along are we in terms of, tackling leprosy in Nigeria?
Well, I would say we're a long way because, number one, we are religious and people to start with. And we know there is this, it's an affliction from the gods, from God, and all that. So religious-wise, our development in terms of healthcare awareness, so these are the setbacks I think we have as Nigerians, dealing with this particular stigma of leprosy.
Okay. Okay, for those who have a leprosy, seeing that, it actually spreads, is it okay for them to share stuff, or share a house, or live in the same space? Or should, once someone is diagnosed with leprosy, should that person be taken to a secluded place?
There's this concept too, and it's a misconception, that leprosy is highly contagious. Leprosy is not highly contagious. It does not spread fast.
Okay.
Oh.
It's not highly contagious, it doesn't spread fast. Actually, 95% of people who come in contact with leprosy, the bacteria, do not actually develop the disease.
Okay. What's that?
95% of people.
Okay.
So you could come, 100 people could come in contact with Mycobacterium leprae, the bacteria that causes leprosy, and only 5% of that would actually go on to develop the disease.
Why that 5%?
Because of immunity, a lot of other factors as well.
Okay.
Immunity being the topmost. Because people that are have low immune system, for example, HIV patients, patients on chemotherapy. So basically, the low immune system, your body fights these things off by itself. Your body normally fights off bacteria.
Okay.
So people with low immune system, low immunity, they stand higher risk of actually contacting and developing the disease.
Okay, so what would you say, how far along are we in terms of advocacy about the leprosy disease here in Nigeria? Are we doing enough, to actually talk to people about what leprosy is?
I think we're doing as much as we can as Nigerians. I think why it's a lot more difficult, because even the elites, even the learned people, do not actually still know this. So how much more those that are unlearned? It will surprise you to know that there are quite a lot of learned people, I mean people with degrees, that still have these misconceptions about leprosy. How much more people that not even learned, that don't follow news outlets, media, updates on information that's going around the world? How about those people? And we know Nigeria is a country that is largely, I will use the word uneducated, not learned. I mean formal education. So these are the setbacks. So are we a long way? Yes, we're a long way. But are we doing stuff to put measures in place to increase and improve the awareness about leprosy? Yes, I think we are. I actually saw an advert on, I think, YouTube talking about the World Leprosy Day, and then it was a cartoon used in local language, you know. So I think that's a good step.
Okay, now because there was a story on Trust TV on a village, you know, where there are lots of lepers there, where they live and everything. It's like they've been cut off from community, from other communities and all that. And you talked about, you know, the leprosy or the disability, or you talked about it not spreading as fast as it should, or how do I put it? You talked about it not spreading as fast as it should, you know, before it becomes a disability. How can people prevent it from becoming a disability? Treatment. Because, and you talked about Nigeria, you know, still being far behind when it comes to, you know, being knowledgeable about, you know, leprosy and everything that entails it, you know. Okay, what about going into these communities, especially talking about rural areas where it's more prevalent?
Okay, now there's something that happens, especially these communities say there's a village that's filled with leprous people and all that. Because when they developed this disease and when they started showing the disabilities because of not receiving treatment, they developed these disabilities, which is amputation, loss of limb and all that. And you see the Lyonnais facet, where you see that their face is looking as if it's disfigured, there are lesions in the face and all that. So they get ostracized. And because they're ostracized, they have to find a way to create a small community of their own, which is why they now gather together in one particular place. You see them always looking as if they flock together, sort of. But that should not have happened in the first place if this awareness about the disease was in place. So people like this, they need treatment. Because the moment they start getting treatments, they stop being infectious.
But is the treatment for leprosy expensive?
I think the treatment of leprosy is actually free.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, okay. It's free. If you reach out to the local primary care center, treatment is free. Yeah. Treatment of leprosy is not, you don't pay for it.
That's interesting. Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming on the program. We've been speaking with Dr. Bright Oris, a medical doctor, and we hope to have you next time on the program.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you much.
Well, with this, we've come to the end of Daybreak for today. It's been quite interesting. Remember, leprosy is not contagious.
It is not. All right. It is. It's not as contagious as people you know paint it to be, but it is contagious. But then it doesn't mean that those who have a leprosy should be ostracized or stigmatized. So then there's a cure for it, and most of the medication is actually free. All right. I'm Dashan Husseina Osman. Thank you so much for staying tuned on Daybreak on Trust TV from beginning to end. We'll be back again tomorrow, same time.
Bye.